Hey everyone, a special treat for you today, special treat for me today at least, and you'll be listening in. So I'm glad you're listening in. Today I'm going to be talking to Marco Casanova, and if that's not enough to draw you in, it ought to be Marco. That's right, you heard it correctly. Casanova is what is that? Does it mean House of Love, Marco? Is that what that is?
New house.
New house. I'm sorry.
I wish
Uh,
Casa, House of Love. That'd be awesome. No, that's new. Just new house.
Actually, when we say it that way, House of Love, it sounds a little bit I don't know, smarmy almost, like House of Love.
I
A place
know.
that
I
you
don't
and
know
I should
how I
not be
feel. I
going.
don't know how I feel with the last name of House of Love, but I'm okay with that. With new house, it's good.
Okay. Yeah, new house. I love it. Casanova. It I heard you once making it, I think we were at a Living Waters training or something. You were making a joke about like Marco Casanova sounds like some, I don't know, some kind of like very like muscular something man or like
Yeah, and then you get this short Mexican. Marco
Marco. So
Casanova, a movie star or something.
you're a movie star to me, Marco. Okay. So everybody, Marco Casanova is on staff. I don't even know your title anymore, but with Desert Stream Ministries, if you don't know Desert Stream Ministries, we'll have a link in the show notes. Wonderful, phenomenal ministry that has been around for 40 plus years and has a super, super, super important part in my story and the freedom that Christ brought me. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, call me up. I'll tell you stories about Desert Stream and their Living Waters program that have just transformed my life. But Marco, tell us a little bit like what is so I mean start with the basic. What is your title at Desert Stream? What do you do there? Um but also like I'd love well start there and then I'm gonna pepper you with some other questions.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I'm associate director at Desert Stream, and I oversee living waters in the United States. That's my main gig here at Desert Stream. I also assist Andrew with certain things. We have a small but mighty staff here in Kansas City, and yeah, so it's been great. I came on as an intern in 2019, but then transitioned into this full-time role shortly after. So it's great to be on this team.
Super. Okay. So give us the Andrew is Andrew Comiskey, the author of or founder of Desert Stream, the author of the Living Waters program. You mentioned Living Waters. How do you give us an elevator pitch for Living Waters? Some people might not know what that is.
Yeah, Living Waters is a group for men and women seeking more wholeness or chastity is kind of the word that we use at Desert Stream, which is kind of an archaic, maybe a little misunderstood word, but we at
Yeah.
Desert Stream want to reclaim and reframe that word. But really, Living Waters, this 20-week process-oriented group for men and women saying, "Hey, I want to grow in wholeness." So the starting points could be pornography addiction, same sex attraction, marital struggle, whatever your starting point is, Living Waters is a way of integrating who we are as sexual beings and learning how to give responsibly that actually dignifies self and others.
Yeah.
So Living Waters is a way of learning how to do that better in the context
Yeah.
of church. So
Yeah. Couple things about Living Waters. Years ago, I remember sharing, we were running a Living Waters program here, and I was sharing with a local pastor, Living Waters, and I kind of gave a similar pitch to what you just said about like, wherever your starting point is, it could be same-sex attraction, it could be pornography, it could be extramarital affairs, it could be this, maybe some residual stuff from past sexual abuse. And he like almost scoffingly was like, huh, that sounds like a pretty, broad program or pretty intense program. And I hung up a little bit embarrassed, but it is. It
mm,
is an
yeah.
incredibly deep, rich, broad program that in a way that's fairly unique in the scope of things, provides space for the body of Christ, broken ones in the body of Christ, to come together under one roof,
Yeah.
um, and experience the love, the transformation of Jesus. And I know from the years that we ran it here, one of the things we would constantly hear from the men and women afterwards was what a blessing it was to be together with our different elements of brokenness as we aspired towards wholeness together in Jesus. So, um,
Yeah, I love that. Honestly, I love that aspect of Living Waters because
yeah,
there's something integrating about the heterogeneity of it that there's
yeah,
many brokennesses expressed. So it's not just so sectarian of, oh, I have my abuse group or my same-sex attraction group. We can be like that in our brokenness, like, oh, my brokenness is special and unique when in fact, I think Living Waters sort of creates a level ground for people just to come to the cross together. Yeah,
Yeah.
the way that my brokenness uh, shows itself may differ than my brother and my sister beside me, but yet the roots may actually be quite similar. So
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
helpful to be together in that, and it breaks isolationism in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the things I'm eternally grateful to you guys for. And I think that was so formative for me. So, Marco, we've talked about your role and some of the ministry, but who are you? Like, how did you get into this? I'm sure you went to college for this kind of ministry. How did you get into this? Give us a little bit of your story. Like,
Yeah. So I encountered Desert Stream Living Waters when I was in the seminary. So I was studying to be a Catholic priest. And I was in the seminary for about 8.5 years. And I encountered Living Waters right at the 8.5 year mark.
hmm,
And it was because I came with my own struggle with same-sex attraction and needing to really discern, is God calling me to be a priest? At this point, when I had encountered Living Waters, I was pretty good. Like I wasn't acting out homosexually like I was years prior. Outside of the context of the seminary community, I was acting out homosexually, had a heavy addiction to pornography. Both of those things were kind of under control, you could say. However, I was still under a bit of a low ceiling of where do I actually land? Is same-sex attraction symptom of something deeper, or is it my destiny? Like
hmm,
is it just where I have to sort of I'm in celibacy because there's really nothing else for me to do with this sort of expression of the fall, this vulnerability of SSA.
hmm,
So this priest friend said, "Hey, there's this guy named Andrew Comiskey out in Kansas City. He really believes Jesus can help persons on the level of deep stuff like this." So I thought, I need it because I'm about to give my life as a deacon, and which every priest is ordained to the diaconate, and it's in the diaconate ceremony that this man promises to be a celibate for the kingdom of God. And I thought, man, I don't know if I'm ready to be a celibate because a celibate renounces the good of marriage, and I don't even like the idea of marriage. So there was some hints that I had some more work of integration to do. So I came to this training, this Living Waters leadership training that we do a few times a year, and it really shifted my life. It really changed my life. And so I returned back to the seminary, left the seminary, came on as an intern to Desert Stream, and it was there that the Lord was doing more integrative work in my life, through empowered discipleship community like Living Waters. The community in Kansas City is pretty robust, a great Christian community, good therapy. So kind of all of the above. My history, obviously, my familiar vulnerability is that of SSA, and had been struggling with that for a long time, but mainly in the dark. I came to Jesus, a real profound encounter with the Lord while I was in the seminary, about 5 years into the seminary, which is less than optimal. You probably should be a Christian before you enter the seminary. But in many ways, I wasn't a Christian. I wasn't surrendered to Jesus in this area of my deepest self, my sexuality. Hello, that needs to be
hmm,
surrendered
hmm.
to the one. And I simply wasn't until I was given this beautiful opportunity just to kind of open myself up to the mercy of God, which put me on a wonderful trajectory of becoming sober and coming to grips with who I am as a man. But a couple years after that, Living Waters was that which catapulted me into the more, which I know we'll get to.
Yeah. So good. Okay, man, you dropped some hand grenades along there that are exploding in my mind. Let me rewind just a little bit because I want to press in and make sure that
Yes.
people didn't miss it, maybe hear more from you about it. But you said, I'm getting ready to make this vow of celibacy, which is giving up the gift of marriage, and
Yeah.
to give that up while not recognizing it as a gift felt disingenuous or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
can you just kind of can we go back to that page and read
Yeah.
us some more from your story about that?
Yes, so John Paul II, I'm a big fan of John Paul II. We are at Desert Stream, but as a seminarian back in the day, I was becoming more familiar with this Polish Pope who loved to write on human love. Honestly,
Mhm.
his whole curriculum vitae is stamped with these moments of writing pretty significant works when it comes to what it means to be human and what it
Yeah.
means to be a human to love with responsibility, with dignity, all of the above. So, really a pivotal player when it comes to sexuality stuff, I think, today. So,
Yeah.
I'm reading TOB as a seminarian, the Theology of the Body, which is a compilation of talks that John Paul II gave in the 80s as the Pope. Every Wednesday, the Pope gives a talk to the public. And so John Paul II gave a series of these talks on these consecutive Wednesdays for a matter of years, which then became a compilation called the Theology of the Body. So basically, a biblical anthropology. That's what the Theology of the Body is. It's just an exposition of the Bible, in which John Paul II is gleaning from the Word of God the principles of what it means to be human and what it means to become more human in light of brokenness. And so there's a section in the Theology of the Body where John Paul II speaks of celibacy for the kingdom of God. And he says that you can't become a celibate for the kingdom of God unless you renounce the good of marriage. So you can't be a celibate unless you renounce the good of marriage. And in other words, you can't renounce something that you never possessed or you've never wanted or you've never actually made peace with. So for me, I always disqualified myself on the basis that I have SSA, I have same-sex attraction, so therefore I'm not called to marriage. And when I was reading John Paul II, it was a challenge because it was as if he was saying, well, wait a minute. The priesthood or any celibate calling for the sake of the kingdom of God is not a dodge of marriage or a hiding place from marriage, but rather you give that up for the sake of being fully identified with Jesus and his kingdom purposes. But for me, the priesthood had become a bit of a hiding place.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was kind of the conflict of, wait a minute, I don't think I've made peace with the fact that as a man, I'm actually capable of fatherhood and I'm capable of being a married man. Like those are powers inherent in who I am as a human person
Hmm.
that I actually haven't made peace with. I've dodged them. I haven't reckoned with them. I haven't faced them.
Hmm.
So they're so I'm I'm stunted in my ability to actually be a celibate. So that's what kind of propelled me out of it.
Yeah. I want to come back to that.
Yeah.
That what you're saying at the end. There's so much in there, and some people listening are probably going like, honestly, I would imagine there's some people listening going like, "What are you talking about?" Like,
Yeah.
no, like you, if you were if you were a gay man, like, you're not stunting anything. What does that mean? Like, what do you mean? We're gonna come back to that, but um,
Great.
because I think it is such a powerful part of your story, and it is not spoken of enough.
Mm.
And I think, and we'll unpack that in a minute. Um, just as an aside, listeners, if you are not familiar with theology of the body, John Paul II's theology of the body, we'll have a couple accessible resources that begin you kind of taking a look at that. It is theology of the body training, at least part one of kind of an introductory training to that is one of the things that I require for every staff member at Regeneration.
Oh, wow. That's all.
It really ought to be required reading for any seminarian, Protestant or Catholic living today. And it strikes me like John Paul II was giving those Wednesday audiences it was the 70s, right? Uh, some
I
I think
think it
it's
was in the 80s.
80s. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm a young guy, no idea, not paying attention at all to that, and I think maybe much of the world was the same as me, but um, man, like just
Mm.
timely, so important for then and for now. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe now more than ever. Okay, Marco. One of the things I've heard you talk about, and I've read you writing about this before, and this too I think will be new to some people in their own understanding of same-sex attraction, same-sex sexual temptation. You've talked about kind of like the value of psychology or the value of even the moment of temptation as an informative moment for you when it comes
Mm.
to paying attention to areas of vulnerability or things like that. And so I think you know what I'm talking about. Maybe you could just explain like, or maybe let me frame the question like this. So, uh, young man, young woman listening, uh, who has experienced for as long as they can remember some same-sex attraction, and they're doing their best to abstain from pornography and abstain from lust. Um, uh, how and when they experience, and this is, I mean, I've talked to guys like this all the time. They experience a moment of same-sex sexual temptation, and they're like, "Crap, there's that,
Yeah.
there's that old thing again. I suck. I'm, whatever," and feeling some shame about it, or they're feeling like, "Hey, I really want to walk out of biblical sexual integrity,
Mhm.
but there's also this kind of voice in the back of my head saying, like, when especially when temptation hits, of am I trying to escape something that's just inevitably me?"
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
how did you deal with that? I mean, did you
Yeah.
experience that? Does that resonate? And what do you how do you respond to that?
Yes, so important. Yes, I can certainly resonate. I mean, as a young Catholic growing up, confused and conflicted with these feelings of same-sex attraction, it put me in a lot of conflict. Like, oh, I want to be faithful to Jesus, but yet I have these attractions that are causing me a lot of anxiety, layers of
Mm,
it.
mm,
So what I have found in discovering that there's meaning behind my same-sex attraction, psychologically speaking, is that there's so much grace for those moments where you do feel same-sex attraction. So what I mean by that is I think SSA is an indicator of something. There's something subterranean, so to speak. There's something beneath the SSA. And so the same-sex attraction is almost like a check engine light, so to speak.
mm, mm,
There's something that you need or something off or something amiss. And it's not to shame you. It's never to say, "Oh, dang it, here I am again. Renounce it, get it out." I don't like that.
mm,
It's more, okay, I'm noticing that I'm vulnerable for some reason, and I'm reaching outside of myself to secure what I actually already have.
mm,
Why am I grasping after this guy that may be compelling to me when in fact I'm more like him than not? So why
mm,
do I see him as all of these things? So I think SSA it can actually be a gift in that it can take us to what's beneath it. What is underneath my experience of same-sex attraction? Now, those things are so dynamic, and we can't say, oh, there's one reason why people experience SSA. That's ridiculous. And no one is trying to say that. I feel like people maybe brand Desert Stream Living Waters to want to sort of fit everybody into, oh, it's the father wound narrative or whatever. But really, I think what we're saying is that there's some reason, psychologically speaking, there's some sort of wound underneath that experience of SSA that Jesus actually wants to get to, but
mm,
also he wants to help me understand a little bit more of myself. So I'll give you
mm,
an example. Whenever I experience same-sex attraction, uh, there are a couple things that I could ask myself, like, well, am I, why am I um, feeling diminished? Sometimes, like in moments of heightened vulnerability to same-sex attraction, there is a feeling of diminishment that I feel, like
mm,
why? So asking myself, why am I feeling this way? It could be an anxiety of needing to face a challenge. I don't know. It could be something as simple as that, facing a challenge at work or a challenging interpersonal conflict or the challenge of marriage and family life. I don't know. There could be many things that seems to threaten my masculinity, my ability
mm,
to be proactive, my ability to engender life and to provide form. So
mm,
whenever there's something that may be challenging that, I tend to be more vulnerable to the same sex attraction
Mm,
stuff,
mm,
you know? And so that initial temptation, so to speak, is an opportunity for me to say, what's going on? You know?
mm,
So in a way, it's actually good. It's a helpful indicator, so to speak. Now, the origins, the psychogenesis of all of that, are those goods in and of themselves? I think that needs more nuance and unpacking. But what I'm saying is that don't fear your temptations. You know,
mm,
don't run away from your temptations. Actually face them and find the narrow way through them. Of course, St. Paul says flee immorality. That's something else. You know, like when
mm.
you're kind of in a circumstance where it's like, whoa, I can fall here. I'm opening porn, or I'm about to fall with this person. It's like, yeah, duh, flee. It's not
Run
like,
away,
oh,
run away, run away. Yeah,
let me
yeah.
dialogue here and find the kernel. You know, no, flee. But in those moments where it's like,
Mm.
whoa, I'm feeling a heightened vulnerability, face it, find the narrow way through it. And there can be so much healing and integration that comes from those moments. I agree.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. I mean, you remind me, I think, Andrew's been writing about this for a long time. More recently, Jay Stringer in his book Unwanted talks about this
Hmm.
exact thing with people wrestling with unwanted sexual behaviors of a variety of kinds. He does not write explicitly about same-sex attraction, but one of the things that he says in Unwanted, he encourages people. He says, "Look, like a little bit of curiosity and kindness
Hmm.
around the specifics of your temptations and the specifics of your story and how they might connect will take you much further than an evening of remorseful, shameful prayer that this will just go away."
Yeah.
And he advocates, to people in the space of temptation or space of our vulnerabilities to not swing wide the door to our temptations, say, "Come on in," but to say, "Hey, you keep knocking here.
Mm.
Why are you here?
Yeah.
What are you looking for?" Like I always kind of picture for myself, like, hey, speaking of Casanova, like if I'm a house and temptation keeps knocking at my door, and I'm
Yeah.
like, what? I want to go to the door and say, hey, like almost like the pizza guy, like did somebody order you in the house? Like, do you know what room they're in? What's happening here? Which is part of what I hear you saying. Like I'm looking, something in me is looking for something,
Yeah.
and I want to just be curious and kind with myself. Um, Marco, again, just thinking about so many people wrestling with unwanted sexual behaviors of any kinds, and certainly some people, not all people, but some people who really experience a lot of shame around just the recurrence of their particular kind of temptation.
Mm.
And the way you're talking about it is really like it's not shaming. Like,
Mm.
did how did you get there? How did you get to a space where it's like, hey, I feel the temptation and it doesn't drag me to some place of feeling woefully inadequate or different or chronically unique or something.
Mm.
But it's just I'm a human being who feels, all manner of or different manners of temptation. I mean, even you said when you're describing living waters before, you said um, it's just level ground at the cross, and we can all gather together with our variety of issues. So, can you just how did you get some freedom from the shame?
Yeah. I would say living waters for sure.
Mm,
100%, 110%. There is something about living waters that has been a compass for me, or a
mm,
guide to sexual wholeness, where I need guides. I need sort of road posts and people who have
mm,
walked 20, 30, 100 steps before me who can say, hey, this is how you navigate these circumstances, or this is how you read your wound, or learn how to read your wound. And so I need that. And so Living
mm,
Waters really provided that for me. I would say, too, coupled with um, facing reality, you know?
mm,
So I'll give you an example. When I first moved to Kansas City, I was out of the seminary, and the seminary was actually at that point a really good community for me, a community of men. And it was in that community that I was starting to really feel like a man among men, which I think is my wound per se, is a masculine wound.
mm,
There is a desire for male friendship, and at some point in my story, that desire, that good desire for male connection, became eroticized. And
Mm.
and so there is in the SSA, there is an actual good desire to be connected with fellows, you know? And so I was starting to live with some guys here in Kansas City, and that was so healing for me because being out of the seminary, I was there was a bit more freedom, but also like in this house that I was living with, we were closer in quarters. And so it was a good challenge of
Mm.
these men are my friends and I want to dignify them. They're not kind of phantoms of my pornography fantasy, or
Mm.
they're not people to lust after. They're people that I need to dignify. And there was something of a good challenge of that because I think for me, who can be slightly a little bit more scrupulous in these areas, it can be like, no, I need to live by myself because I struggle with SSA and I can't live
Oh
with other
yeah.
guys, you know? But I think living with other guys was actually a good challenge where I
Mm.
learned how to be a man among men and how to face what may be a compelling temptation in a weak moment, but to say, I don't have to do that. And
Mm.
on the basis of, I want to dignify him, and that doesn't dignify him and it doesn't dignify me. And there
Mm.
was something so integrating about that. So Living Waters, yes, there's sort of this beautiful training ground of becoming more whole, but then actually facing um reality and growing through
Mm.
that, I think really diminished um the high octane compulsive SSA thing, but also diminished a lot of shame where it's like, okay,
Wow.
if I feel that, if I bump up against that desire to lust or to give into temptation of whatever kind, it's to say, okay, I know this place. I'm familiar with this that I'm bumping up against, but I need not freak out. I can kind of use the tools that I've come to learn and find a
Yeah.
narrow way through it.
Yeah. That's great. It's such a it's there's so much grace in the way you're describing it. So much invitation. So I want to shift gears because that, and I'm super excited to kind of press into this with you because, but I think you're already pointing the way, um, in culturally, uh, in our in the secular culture and within churches throughout the United States, and maybe all of the West. I don't know. There's different characterizations of different approaches to for those who experience same-sex attraction. There's the some folks who say, look, it's not just same-sex attractions. God made me gay. This is who I am. I'm getting married. And more people saying, yep, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Typically referred to as side A. Then there are Christians who say, no, a solid traditional reading of the scriptures and historic teaching of the church is that this is out, that acting out sexually with somebody of the same sex is against God's will. I may not understand all the reasons I got here, but I can't act on this area of temptation for me. And so in order to be consistent with what God wants for me, I'm going to remain celibate. Um, and some of those folks who would refer themselves as gay celibate Christians, some who might not, but that's typically been called side B. I don't know who came up with these names. It's not the same people that do the generation names, but anyway. Um, and then and more recently, there's been like something called side X and side Y and da 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 da. And that's not the point of this podcast. That's not the point of my question either. But one thing I find missing in all of that is an area that I feel like Desert Stream does a wonderful job of articulating, and I've heard you do it. I've heard Andrew Comiskey do it. Um, that comes from John Paul II, and it's a different perspective because it's not even necessarily like how am I going to respond to this specific area of temptation or desire, but rather it's a look at uh, who am I? Who am I designed to become?
Yeah.
And really thinking about the human person, including our sexuality, male and female, and what that means. So to me, it's a very aspirational perspective, and I wonder if you might just kind of share some of your perspective on that and um, how you, yeah, how you think about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like labels.
Mm.
I don't think labels have been good to us,
Mm.
especially those of us who experience same-sex attraction. Labels aren't helpful. So letting go of gay or even straight or homosexual,
Mm.
heterosexual as adjectival qualifiers of who I am as a person. Like, oh, I'm a
Mm,
heterosexual Christian. I think that's just as bad as saying I'm a homosexual Christian or
mm,
I'm a gay Christian or I'm a straight Christian. I think letting go of those gives a little bit more space for the biblical reality of who we are as male and female. So I like the language of I'm a guy who struggles. I just think
mm,
that's so much better than sort of tacking on all of these like these qualifiers that I think just confuses our becoming.
mm,
I think some of the side B argument is that, well, me calling myself gay or queer is giving language to an experience, but it's more of like a secondary or tertiary identification. So it's not my primary identity, but it's maybe my secondary or tertiary identity,
mm,
which I mean, that's so nuanced. I don't think people actually live in that type of nuance. Nor is it equated often with, oh, it's like being an American. Being an American is good, but also has some bad qualities to it. So it's kind
mm,
of like being queer. It has good qualities and bad qualities. But I think again, I think it's apples and oranges to compare that to being an American or a Mexican or something. But I do think that letting go of any sort of label is just helpful. I have found it helpful because I think what it opens me up to is, who am I? What is this body that I have? I mean, I have a design. There's
mm,
something inherent to my very being that I actually want to come and make peace with. And so you mentioned male, female, the Imago Dei. I think that's the baseline. Let's just start there.
mm,
Of I'm a man, and just de facto of being a man with a male body and all of the male equipment, so to speak. I'm being drawn, I'm directed to dignify her. And
mm,
she, as a woman with all of her equipment and her physicality, she's drawn and made for him. Now, what does that mean? I don't think that necessarily means that all of us are called to marriage. I'm not saying that, but all of us are called to be in right relationship with the opposite. And I think tacking on any sort of queer or gay identity inherently hinders the freedom to come out of myself for the sake of the other. I just
mm,
think it
mm,
does. I think it
mm,
it sort of puts on another layer of disqualification, or I'm special, or even a little pride of I'm kind of unique and maybe even a little bit better than those of my same sex, but who don't struggle like me.
mm,
I think those are very dynamic and maybe uh, interesting motives, I think, in those tacking on of queer, gay, LGBTQ language. But instead, just to kind of fling them off, I think gives us a freedom to enter into that sort of man woman relating, which I think is seminal to just becoming human. I mean, to
mm,
harken back to John Paul II, JP2 would say, in order to become oneself, you have to learn how to give yourself. And so if you never actually come out of yourself and actually give yourself, and he's speaking precisely about giving yourself to the opposite sex here. It's not just sort of this esoteric philanthropy, like, oh, I'm just a giver. It's like I'm learning how to come out of myself and learn how to dignify her. It's
mm,
then that I become myself. I was just speaking to Carl Truman, who I know
mm,
we both appreciate and admire, and he was speaking about how Adam is Adam by nature, but Adam didn't become Adam until he saw Eve. There's
mm.
just something about him being awakened and actually
Yeah.
becoming who he is only when he sees her. I mean, that's the basis of all
Mm.
of our humanity, right?
Yes, we have, okay, let's just, if you're listening and you're like, what's going on here? What are we talking about? What does he mean by dignifying? It sounds like he's talking about sex. Like, yes, yes, yes. We got to just kind of stay in those waters for a moment because this is, there's such glory here. So I'm just going to just reiterate what you just said. So Carl Truman says Adam is Adam by nature, but he is not fully Adam, and certainly does not fully understand who Adam is until he sees Eve. Um, I think it was Dr. Todd White in his book Mere Sexuality says this is just poignant and matter of fact. It's plain. It is going back to a word you used earlier. It is reality, and yet it's like we can't see the reality. Um, that there is however many organs in the human person, male and female, it, plenty of them, but there's only one organ in man and only one organ in woman that cannot fulfill its purpose outside of union with another human person.
Oh,
My
yeah.
lungs do all they need to do within myself. My stomach likewise, my heart likewise. But it is male female genitalia that you can't even understand what this organ is about
Yeah.
without the other. Um, when you say you're made to dignify the other, you're talking about this. This is something about where you're going with that.
Yeah.
Yes, no.
Good question. I think it certainly includes that, but it's not just reduced to genital activity. I think there is a way in which my body is an emblem of my capacity to dignify her. So,
Hmm.
I mean, John Paul II, there's a wonderful article he wrote called a Meditation on Givenness, which is just brilliant. It's
Hmm.
not very popular, but you can totally find it on Google. There's a free PDF. So definitely do that. But he says in this article that every man should bless every woman in his orbit. It's like the duty of every man to dignify every woman in his orbit. That's what he says, in his orbit. It's kind of an
Hmm.
interesting way to put it. And he says, maybe it's you who is called by God to remind her of her inestimable worth and special beauty. Now,
Hmm.
he's not speaking exclusively about like a marriage or even sexually speaking, but he's saying there's something inherent in every man that has this incredible power, this incredible opportunity to bless and secure her. Now, of course, we have to do it
Hmm.
responsibly, right? Or you'll be called to human resources. Like you have to be responsible and appropriate according to the relationship. But I, as a man, have actually a call to dignify and bless and secure the women that I work with. You know,
Hmm.
that's just a part of who I am. Yeah, it's sexual in that it's intimately connected with who I am as a man. It's not genital. That's reserved for the marital bed. But there's something certainly sexually speaking about how I am and who I am with everybody around me. And so I
Yeah.
think it's more about that. Now, of course, there's a moment when it becomes so exclusive and so particular in the context of genital union in marriage. But outside of that, it's almost like I'm becoming this gift giver.
Hmm.
I'm reminding people of their gift. I mean, that's kind of how John Paul II lived. And that's why his writings are so challenging, because it's like,
Hmm.
who does that? At the grocery store, it's like that's the last thing you want to do is like, oh, I want to bless you. It's like we don't think like that. But John Paul II's like, no, this is what it means to be in the dance of being human.
Hmm.
This is how we ought to live. This is about making peace with who you are so that you can secure those outside of you of who they are. And so yeah, I think that the call is high. Now, obviously, for me as a guy, I had to make peace with my sexuality before I could even do that. So before coming to grips with my own need for healing and stuff, I thought I have no problem with blessing women. You know what I mean? Like I'm friends with women. I like women enough, but there was a deeper allergy against woman that I wasn't necessarily paying attention to in my
Hmm.
experience of same-sex attraction. I just wrote her off as, oh, woman in general is not really worthy of my pursuit. Like
Hmm.
I'm not attracted to her. So therefore, I'm not going to I'm not going to pursue her. In a way, I think that's a subtle misogyny. I think there's like a subtle there's like a subtle checking out of what I'm actually made for there. I'm not saying that everyone has to be so high octane sexually attracted to women, but I'm saying to sort of bypass her or to write her off as unworthy of my gift
Hmm.
is actually it's not making peace with oneself. Does that make sense?
Marco, yeah, well, one of the things I think that's kind of countercultural to what you're saying that may be worth calling out a little bit is that um, you are you are necessarily proposing, and I know this isn't original to you, but I'm just saying in this conversation that your identity is inherently, immutably connected to your body.
Yeah.
That you are your body. That so, as a man, your gift to woman, your relating to woman, necessarily has something to do with your manhood, and your relating with woman has something necessarily to do with her womanhood. That those can't be extracted out. No one talks like that. I mean that like that is so counter to I think what's
Mm.
in the airwaves right now. But so if you're listening, listeners, I want to just encourage you for a moment, just by way of example, to consider, and this maybe won't work for everybody, but just for a moment, your mother and your father, wherever you are right now, and I'm assuming your parents are alive, maybe they're not, but wherever you are right now, if your phone rang and it was your mom and you picked it up and she said, you know, hey, I was just thinking about you. I want to tell you, I'm just so proud of you. Oh, mom, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And you hang up the phone, and then uh, how does that feel? Where do you feel that in your body? What experience do you have? If you're a man listening, what experience do you have of yourself as a man? If you're a woman, what experience do you have of yourself as a woman in that context? And now imagine for a moment that same situation, the phone rings and it's your father, and you pick it up and it's your dad, and he says, "Hey, I was just thinking about you, and I want to let you know I'm proud of you." How does that feel? Does it feel the same? Does it feel different in your body? How does it? If you're a man, how does it feel for you? If you're a woman, and I think that's just an example. If you can even hover there for a moment in your own listening, I mean, for me, I'll just speak for me. Like, there's a vast difference, and it goes beyond just that my mom and dad are different personalities and live in different places. And what
Mm.
there's something about the depth of my dad's voice or the sound of my mother's voice that has to do with his maleness, her femaleness, that does impact me differently. And so I wanted to kind of just shine a light on that piece of what you're saying because that I think helps me make sense a little bit of what you're suggesting about and what John Paul II is suggesting about um, uh, that you are with everyone you meet designed to be giving your manhood. That manhood is designed to be a gift in a particular way in marriage, but with everyone. And so yeah, just riff off that for a minute.
Yeah,
Does
I
that
love
connect
that.
with what you're saying?
Honestly.
And
Yeah, and it's so you're right. I love that mother father example because they're so different, but yet they bless us in different ways. But it's so there is something so vastly different about a woman versus a man speaking blessing to a son, for example. John Paul II would even go so far as to say, inherent in every man is the capacity to be son, to be groom, and to be father. And
mm,
inherent in every woman is a capacity to be daughter, to be bride, and to be mother. So you think about that, like,
mm,
whoa, just by my nature, I have these powers, obviously, to be son and daughter. That usually tends to be a little bit easier for us to comprehend. But for maybe those of us who are single and who don't want to be single, or maybe those of us who experience a lot of brokenness and disqualify ourselves based on that brokenness, to think that I'm actually made to be a groom and to be a father, or I'm made to be a bride and to be a
mm,
mother, it's just a profound, like, whoa. And that really helped me to make peace with the fact that I can secure a woman in love, and I actually wanted to do that, even though there was
mm.
fear about that. But there
Wait,
was
what do you mean you wanted to do that? Like, what do you what was that like for you? What was your experience of discovering like, oh, wait, I actually want to?
Yeah. So it wasn't until I came to Living Waters that I heard these witnesses of men and women coming out of former gay lifestyles and who received an incredible healing from the Lord, but also their own process of becoming more chaste, and now they were married. And these were like the first time, this was the first time that I was experiencing this type of witness. And so that awakened in me the reality that, oh my gosh, I've never thought of myself as a father because as a biological father. But I certainly want to be a father.
Mm,
And that's honestly, that's what propelled me out of the seminary, is because if God is calling me to be a biological father and to be a husband naturally, um, it I have to search that out, you know? And I
mm,
just never allowed myself to actually desire that because I always thought, one, I can't because of SSA, but two, what woman is going to want me with this type
mm,
of brokenness? Like that's going to
mm,
be a strange, this is so interesting. But hearing the witnesses almost broke that disqualification, where
mm,
it's like, oh, yeah, I walk with a limp, so to speak, when it comes to my gift giving, but I can still be a gift and I can learn how to give it. And if God wants me to be married, he's going to make it so. But
mm.
I don't want to go my whole life thinking that I'm disqualified from it just based on this SSA, because it seems that JP2 and these Desert Stream fellows say otherwise.
A couple things. One, I'm 53. I've been married for 20, coming up on 25 years. I walk with a
Congratulations. That's
limp.
awesome.
I walk with a limp in my ability to give myself as a good gift. And at 53, I'm discovering ways that I have not believed I could be a good father and have not known myself as father. And so part of what I am so compelled by in JP2's teaching and the way that you guys help me understand it is the aspirational vision of manhood. This is not about, and certainly the aspirational of the gift of my body, the gift of male and female. Uh, it is who I am and it is who I'm becoming. It is who we
Mm,
are and it's who we're becoming. And I think there's something about that that is feels gracious and kind today and feels compelling towards, oh, well, if he's made me to be a good husband, if he's made me to be a good father, if he's made me to be a good man, if that's in my makeup, in my DNA, then I I can pursue that. I can
yeah.
go after it. Um, so with that in mind, I want to play I want to push a button in what you just shared because I I know some people listening will will have heard people say like, oh wait, hold on. If Marco's got same-sex attraction, he has no right to marry a woman because
Mm,
he's just setting her up for devastation. Like that's deceitful. It's whatever. Like I'm not saying that, but how do you respond to that
mm,
sentiment, which is out there and which a lot of men and women dealing with same-sex attraction feel put on them? I mean, there are wounds, certainly real wounds in marriages where someone with unresolved, unprocessed same-sex attraction stuff got into a marriage in maybe in a similar vein to how you describe getting into the priesthood, kind of like just trying to make this all work, um, and that end up bringing a lot of heartache and wreckage. What would you say, kind of people wrestling with some of those questions?
yeah, I mean, those are great questions. I think, um, however, I think the presupposition in the question is that people are just immutably gay. Like
Mhm.
people are just gay by nature, which I just inherently disagree with. I think it's a faulty anthropology. It's a faulty presupposition of saying, oh, well, people are just that way. There's no possibility of this man or this woman making peace with their sexuality, biologically speaking, and actually having a wherewithal and an ability to be in a covenant of marriage and to be
Mhm.
faithful. So I just think that that presupposition is false. However, what I appreciate about Living Waters, and my wife and I met on the basis of Living Waters, is that both of us both felt inherently disqualified from the possibility of marriage for different reasons. My wife comes out of a sexual abuse background. I come out of same-sex attraction. So the Lord met us on this disqualification thing. And
Mm,
there was something about his capacity to meet us in these areas where we thought we were just damaged goods and no one would necessarily want us because of these things.
mm,
um and yet this mercy that God gives, this kingdom come, enabled us to actually trust Jesus in the healing process, and it brought us together. And so there is a common ground that we have in our marriage to where it's like, oh no, Jesus really helps us. And so whenever we bump up
mm,
against, we do, of course, I bump up against my stuff, she bumps up against her stuff, and it's like Jesus, it's like we're desperate for Jesus in this marriage. And so that's just kind of the foundation of it. And I would never suggest to anybody that they never share this with their bride or their husband. I think this needs to be known. This is premarital. This is something you need to work out. Now, of course, if you're married and you're like, I've never brought this to the light, it's like, okay, great. You need to contact Desert Stream. You need to allow people to walk with you to do this responsibly, because
mm,
there there is there is a truth in the question of, uh, you know I want this to be good for both parties. I don't want someone to do this irresponsibly, and that's very true. You know, it's also the same in regards to a pornography addiction or affairs or whatever your sin du jour or your lust of choice might be. There needs to be a proper and a prudent exposition of that in terms
yeah.
of in the marital relationship. So yeah, but I think the point of your question was more based on, is this guy just immutably gay? And I would say no, I don't think anybody is. And so, but again, this is where I think John Paul II is such a prophetic voice in speaking into these issues of sexuality and identity, and just making a level ground of where male and female, he created them. Now
Yeah.
we have to unpack that responsibly. This is why I think I really want to help communities become healing places for people, because how do you walk this out? You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
this is deep stuff. This
Yeah.
is like persistent brokenness. This is
Mm,
dynamic, deep stuff, whether it be homosexuality or sexual abuse or whatever it is. And so, YouTube videos are only going to help so much. It's like, where do I go? You know,
yeah.
and the queer thing is becoming more big and more compelling. You know, those of us who were queer identified and in queer communities, there were reasons why we were in them, and
Mm,
they weren't entirely bad. I mean, there was a
right.
sense of community. There was something compelling about the lifestyle. So then when you meet Jesus and you pivot your life and you find good freedom, and you're living in the light and you're forging good connections and relationships with people, you actually need an empowered community around you to help you do that. You
Mm,
can't do that in
nicely said. Yeah.
isolation. So for those of us who come out of this stuff, all the more reason we need the church as an empowered
Mm.
healing space for us to continue to take steps forward.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. I've thought for so many years that, man, if if those in the church who do not wrestle with same-sex attraction, that's not their area of vulnerability. It's pornography. It's um, eating too much. It's alcohol. It's whatever. It's a temper. If that's the baggage they bring into marriage, or that's the baggage they bring into church, or that's the baggage they bring into adulthood, if we put a ceiling over them, the way that culturally and unfortunately more and more the church is putting a ceiling over men and women who experience the limp of same-sex attraction, and said, like, this is who you are. This is a part of your identity. And I think I appreciate you calling that out as like that. Wait, that's an anthropology that I do not accept. And Christianity, there's no, you don't find that in Scripture. Like, this is not a part of the historic teaching of the church. Like, Christian anthropology, if there's a anything beyond uh, beloved of God, it's male and female. Anything outside of child of God, it's male and female. Um, and I think there's something about the ceiling that is restrictive. That's
Yeah.
and that's but with that said, even with that said, I do think that there are so many of us who we still experience elements of our own stories that maybe aren't as explicitly spoken of as like this is just who you are, but
Mm.
we still carry around like this is just who I am. And
Yeah.
those spaces go unexamined, and we don't recognize that we're living under that. And I think that's another element of why this kind of aspirational vision of what does it mean to be a man, what does it mean to be a woman, and inherent in our bodies. And I love that word dignify, like that I dignify myself and dignify another when I recognize that I, by God's design, as an element of the Imago Dei, am designed to be a good gift, to be generous
Yeah.
with my person, with my personhood. Um, and I think you guys, in a very articulate, sometimes graduate school level, my elementary school ears, like um, hold on to. And it's one of the reasons that I do not subscribe to many newsletters anymore. I need a simpler kind of email
Don't
space
blame
than
you.
that. But I do remain in touch with you guys because of you provide a clarion call, a prophetic voice in this day and age around this stuff that I so value. So Marco, let me give you the last word. Anything else that you didn't say, we didn't get into? You're like, well, it would be amiss if we stopped here. I'd love to just hear any final thoughts from you, and then we'll wrap.
Yeah, the final thought that I keep having in my mind is just the freedom to struggle, I think
Mm,
is important today. So being a Christian and coming to Jesus and having amazing experiences of conversion doesn't mean that you're not gonna experience some temptations that you rather not have.
mm,
Or does that negate or cancel out those experiences of real conversion? But I think the church can become a wonderful place for people to allow the Lord to meet them in their process. And so I want the church to become that more. I don't think she's there quite yet. I don't think we do that very well. In some circles, it's like, I don't even struggle anymore with SSA. And I'm like, well, I mean, maybe for you, that's wonder. It's not the case for me. It's not the case for a lot of people that I walk with. And so I want there to be good space for us to work that out. There's other
mm,
camps that's like, well, it's good that I struggled, or it's good that I feel this way. And how I feel is how I am. Another opposite end of the spectrum, obviously. But I think we as Christians can become much better as healing caregivers to people when we just give them the space to speak that out without any shame, but with a vision. So the vision of God is redeeming something so personal in you, and what that is who you are as a man or who you are as a woman, and he's redeeming that. And this struggle that maybe you hate right now for various reasons, he's actually using it as a way in, as an avenue into the depths beneath the fracture, so as to
mm,
rediscover a lost fullness. And so I just want the members of the church to catch something of that fire, because I know for me early on that would have been so transformative. And
mm.
so yeah, let's speak that out. That's
I
all
love
I got
that.
today.
That's a great note to close on. Marco, thank you. Thank you just for your faithfulness in your own personal journey. Um, that by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, they overcame the evil one. And I think, just thank you. Thank you for the testimony of becoming, of being on the way. And thank you for the work that you guys do at Desert Stream. So grateful for you. Again, those of you who want to hear more or learn more about Desert Stream, those of you who want to take the deep dive into a Living Waters training, we'll have a link in the show notes below. We'll also have a link to some introductory material about theology of the body, and that article by JP2 that Then Marco mentioned a meditation on givenness. That we'll have all those in the show notes. So, Marco, thanks again for being here, brother.
Thank you so much, Josh.